Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey folks, we're back again. I have another awesome guest on today, Curtis Miller, who was the head trainer at Union Fitness. He's put up some awesome powerlifting numbers, an 800 squat, a 440 bench, a 771 deadlift to total 2,000 pounds, and that's all raw. You competed from like a 198 to a 242, right?
Yeah. I've been 198, 220, 242.
Thank you for being on. We actually ran into each other. We've kind of known each other from social media for a while. And then we ran into each other at the Swiss conference. And like we immediately got into these awesome conversations. And I'm like, fuck, I got to get you on the podcast. Cause it's so cool. And I think I like the way that you have your lifting background, then your competitive background. And then you got years of training too, which you learned. I don't think people realize how much more you can learn training other people. And then like being the head of Union Fitness, like I'm sure there's so many different things, putting up programs, watching other trainers, making sure they're doing a good job. And like, it seems to me there's all different kinds of knowledge. There's the knowledge of, yes, you were a world-class athlete and you did it yourself. And then there's the knowledge of training other people. And then there's the knowledge of coming from different backgrounds. And all this different stuff that comes into play. And it seems like to me, you've experienced a bunch of different ones that all accumulate into like this wealth of knowledge that you have now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you said it pretty well, is they all feed off each other. Mm-hmm. You know, when I decided to get into this profession, powerlifting wasn't really on the top of my priority list. I had just started working out. And I realized that I loved helping other people more so than I really enjoyed like helping myself, you know, in a weird way. But then as I saw them progress, it fueled me and motivated me to be a better person and a better coach for them. And it just was kind of this snowball effect, you know. And I think working with people one-on-one, whether it be you know, the young athlete or even the older individual who wants to be more independent for the rest of their life, you just develop these people skills along the way and these communication skills and you build relationships. And I mean, it's without a doubt, it's the greatest skill that I've gained from it that's helped me in my previous position at Union Fitness.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny because with the people that I train now, every now and then, one of my old people that I trained or one of my teammates back in the day, they're like, "Oh my God, Chad, you've gotten so nice." Because like back in the day, it was like I was competing. It was about me. And so when I helped people, it was like, yeah, I want to help people, but it's about my lifting. And like, so I was like relentless. Like there was no like, I'm like, yeah. You asked me for help. I'm not paying you. So just shut the fuck up and listen to me. And now it's like, well, I'm paying you. Like I need to make these people better. They're paying me. And I've kind of, I guess, grown up and matured a little bit where it's like, it's not about what I want to do. It's about me getting the information to them that they need to be better.
Right.
And it's interesting, like you said, is because I have clients, like right now I have from 14 to 74. Mm-hmm. And it's a wide variety of stuff. You know, the 14-year-old, I'm like, dude, we're just trying to get a base now. Yeah, he wants to do sports and play sports and stuff, but it's like, dude, I got to get the base. And then with my 74-year-old, it's like, dude, you worked your whole life.
Yes.
And he was a contractor that I met when I was doing my stonework, and I kept going, you need to let me work with you. You need to work with me. Because he's like all hunched over and stuff. And we've made a huge, huge progress, but it was like, training a power lifter to break a world record or training him to live a better quality of life. They're both amazing to me. Like I'm proud that I could do either one because I'm like, the guy worked his whole life. Now that he's about to retire, I want him to have as many awesome years as possible.
Right.
That's what he worked for, you know?
And the thing about it is like in the grand scheme of things, yes, approaching the training to each of those individuals is different.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really the same on the level of, you have to treat the human, the individual first, find out what makes them tick, because you have to find out how coachable they are,
Mm-hmm.
and what type of feedback they respond really well to.
Yes.
So if you just look at them as, hey, this is a stonemason, or hey, this is a power lifter, you're never gonna help them really reach their full potential, because you got to understand them on the base level first.
Mm-hmm. I think that's super, super true. It's like trying to find their personality, trying to find the cues that they're going to understand.
Exactly.
And it's like, with my 14-year-old, I'm like, I can't hammer on him too hard. I want him to do this the rest of his life. Like, I want him to love this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like bending things. And then my 74-year-old, it's like, well, okay, his recovery rate may not be good, but I know he's an old car. He's actually probably one of my toughest clients, as far as like, I can tell him, he's like, he's old school, man. He's like, all right, I'll do it. He gives me shit about it, of course, because he's a smart ass like I am. But as far as like, hey, it's raining, go drag the sled. All right. Yeah. Like, my younger people are like, what? It's raining out.
Well, that generation, they never really like questioned a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Which, that can be good and bad. And just workers,
Mm-hmm.
So with them, it's cool because they trust you. And I think that's one of the coolest things that I've experienced as a coach, is gaining trust from your clients to where they'll just run through a wall for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now they may question it, and that's the goal. You want them to question things, because you want them to learn and evolve on their own.
Yeah.
Because like, we got to understand, like, we don't want them to rely on us forever.
Right.
We have to educate them to be able to take care of themselves in the long run, right? So questioning is good, but being able to step up to the plate and be like, throw whatever you got at me, that's where it's at.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome you said that, because that's a point I try to make all the time. And it's kind of like you said, it's like, okay, well, I know that this dude's a hard worker and he's going to do whatever he does. So like you said earlier, first of all, like, okay, I have to understand that this dude's like, if I go, hey, how are you feeling? He's going to go, I'm fine. Even if he's sore as fucking shit. So like, he's one of those guys where I know it's like, okay, I might have to pull him back a little bit, because like, he will run through a fucking wall if I tell him to. Yeah. But yeah, and then like you said, I want them to go, yeah, you betcha I'll do it. Hey, why am I doing this though?
Right.
Because, and like you said, I think one of the best things, a long time ago, I was talking to somebody about one of my training partners, Scott. And I'm like, I think he could be better than I ever was. Like, I think he has the skills and stuff to do that. And they're like, what? You would train someone to beat you? I'm like, yeah, of course. Yes, like, that's the goal. And like, even when I train my clients, I'm like, I'll train you forever if you want me to.
Yes.
I go, but ideally, I want you to learn and understand. So at some point, like, you could do your own training.
You should have done this for a living a long time ago. Like, hearing you talk about this, yeah. I think you always had the mindset of what it takes to train people, because it is very special. I went to college with people who I asked them, like, why do you want to get in this profession? And even different interns that we've had come through Union Fitness, I'm like, why do you want to do this? And a couple times I've had the answer of, I enjoy working out. And that's a terrible reason to get into the profession of coaching and or training, because it's not about you. And if you're busy, like you should be, you don't have time to focus on yourself that much.
Mm-hmm.
So that working out and training yourself kind of goes out the window. At the same time, you have to keep developing your own skills underneath the barbell to be able to apply it, to have credibility. So, I mean, you're super busy as a coach and trainer, but yeah, it's always about them first, Yeah,
it has to be.
Yeah.
And it's the funny, because I always talk about, because I still love to learn. I still go to seminars. Mm-hmm. I mean, I try to throw out my name and go, hey, can I come to your seminar? Like, can this save you a couple bucks? But yeah, I still love going to seminars. I still love learning. I still love going and visiting my friends that are top powerlifters, and we go train and to see what I can learn new. And one of the things I really love is I love learning different cues.
Yes.
Because it's so funny how you can say so many things to people, and it's that one way you say it that sticks. And I'm the same way. Like, I've had people tell me stuff, and then finally I'm like, dude, why didn't you just say that to begin with? And it's because they didn't know. We got to like make that connection to where we kind of understand, each other and what we mean.
Right. And the thing is like, there are universal cues, right? But those cues aren't universal for everybody.
Yes.
So you have to, that's the thing about coaching legitimately has to be specific for each individual. There are things that you can apply to anybody, whether it's exercises, set and rep scheme, whatever. But, one person is going to take a cue completely differently than somebody else will. And especially as a coach, if you're not in person, like you and I have ventured into the online coaching realm. You got to learn how to do that now through technology, through computers and phones.
Yeah.
Whereas like you could typically walk up to somebody if they're squatting and you can see if their back's not tight, and you can, hit their lat and they just tighten right up. Well, what do you do now? So that's where evolving as a coach has to be your number one priority.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with my years of lifting, which I think I figured out the other day. I've been lifting weights for like 38 years or something. And it's an evolution all the way through. And I competed at a high level for 15 years.
Yeah.
And there's things I did then that I was set on.
Right.
That now I don't coach. I don't coach because it was like, no, I've learned like better ways to do it.
Yeah. And that's the goal.
Yeah. And you have to keep learning and you have to keep pushing that. And then I think an interesting thing too on kind of what we were saying earlier is like, I've seen personal trainers that just want to tell people what to do. And I'm like, I don't. Like, I'll tell them why I'm doing it even if they don't ask. Like, here, we need to do this because you're weak in this area. You need to do this. And my brain's flipping right now. The one thing you said, I was just thinking about the online training thing, and you like, because I still get frustrated in online training sometimes. And it's funny because this weekend I have one of my online clients. I'm like, dude, you need to come up and visit. Like, I'm getting frustrated with this video shit. I need to be able to put my hands on you. And it's like what you said, sometimes like you can be like, activate this, activate this, activate this. And you can't get them to do it. But all you got to do is poke them or tap them, and then bam, that fires. And it's like, God, this is so much easier in person.
Right. I have a really, interesting story about that. Years ago, I would say 4 years ago, my wife and I decided to move up to Pittsburgh. And I met Casey at the Arnold in 2016. And I went up and I introduced myself and I talked to him a little bit. And, that's when he had just started going through his battle with ulcerative colitis. And he was planning on competing at the Arnold. And he was set up to potentially break the all-time 220 raw record, And he got sick. And I knew he wasn't competing. And I went up and I started talking to him. And I was like, look, man, I know you're not feeling well. Just want to introduce myself. Been following you. My wife is actually from Pittsburgh and we would like to come up and visit. And he was like, anytime, man, I'd be more than happy to help you if you want to stop in and train. So we started making monthly trips up there, and we lived 6 hours away. And we would leave on a Friday night after work at like 6 p.m., get there at like midnight and stay at her dad's house, and then go to the gym the next morning and then go home. And after a couple of years of doing that, I came home one day from work and I was like, hey, let's move to Pittsburgh. And she was like, and I was that dude that like was never like, I was going to stay at home, live like in the hometown that I grew up in forever. That was my goal. And I think just with her exploring different places and seeing how cool of a city Pittsburgh was and all it had to offer. And then on top of that, the training crew that was at Union Fitness, it was unlike anything I'd ever been a part of. And I knew I had to be there. And I didn't have a plan of how I was going to work or make money. She's a teacher, so we knew that after a while she would be able to find a teaching position. But up until the month before we moved up, I didn't have a job. And I was ready to work at Chipotle or, wash cars, whatever I had to do. And Casey sent me a message and he was like, "Hey man, I need a director of personal training. Are you in?" And you start crying because it's like everything just came full circle in this really weird way.
Right.
And he had been coaching me for like 2 years. And then one day, I moved up there and I was deadlifting. It was like the first week I had moved up. And I'm doing block pulls. And we were trying to work on this cue with engaging my upper back on deadlifts. And because every time I went up there to visit, it was squat day.
Yeah.
We were squatting. I didn't get to deadlift with him. So I'm there, I'm doing these block pulls, and he comes over and he's like, "Hey, do another set, same weight." And I set up, I grab the bar, and he comes over and he pokes me like right in my lat. And I tighten up my lats and the bar like starts to hover off the floor. And I did the set, I put the bar down and I was like, that was 2 years that we've been trying to figure that out. And you took 5 seconds and poked me in my lat and I just learned it. And it's kind of crazy, because I think a lost art right now, without rambling too much, is traveling to learn from people in person.
Yes.
And this is a whole other topic, right? Like you and I, we talked at Swiss. I mean, I only live 3 hours away from Columbus, but you flew from the other side of the country.
Yeah.
But how many people are really doing that these days? And I don't think it's that many, because a lot of people try to find what they want online, which is a great tool. You can learn a lot, but there's something very, very special with meeting people in person and learning from them face to face. And I think it's a lost art.
Yeah, I think it's funny because one of the problems I've always had in powerlifting is guys will spend tons of money on buying different gear. Guys will spend tons of money on supplements. They'll spend tons of money on drugs. But if you go, "Hey, there's a seminar coming up that's $150, they're like, whoa, $150, and I got to travel. And I'm like I tell everybody, the thing that launched my powerlifting career was my first seminar with Dave. Like, cause he ripped my shit apart.
Right.
Like that was back in the old days, and he was like, he's nice now compared to
right.
Like there wasn't anything good about what I did. It was like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. Yeah. But that was the best money I ever spent. Exactly. And I think it's the same thing. It's like you can, there is a lot of great information online. There's a lot of shitty information online. If you weed through, there's a lot of good information. But I don't care who you are. It's not the same as being in person with somebody where that person can correct you and fix your shit. And I'm even trying to think about with online, it's like, how can I get it to where clients come out and spend a weekend here and then we start their online training?
Yeah.
So at least I can get like, here's what your technique is. It's not going to be perfect, but at least you kind of understand what I'm looking at. And when I tell you this, you can go, "Oh, Chad told me that weekend and I had to do this. So this is what he means."
Well, I think that's where the responsibility should be on the client.
Yes.
Right? It's how much do they really want to learn? And I understand like people are very, very busy between families and jobs and taking care of this and that, and the cost of everything right now. But if you're putting your trust into a coach that you're working with on the other side of the country, potentially, wouldn't you want to get your money's worth and go at least see them in person at least once?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's speaking for me too, because I've been working with Josh Bryant for about 1.5 years, but I can tell you right now, I'm going to be taking a trip down to Texas and we're going to blow up a Waffle House somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. just to see them. And like everybody has different cues and everybody has, like I did on my YouTube channel, I did a video the other day about squatting. and I'm very into sit back, shins as straight and down as possible. But in that video, I also talked, I go, just, this is the way I do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. And I'm not so arrogant that my way is the best way.
Right.
Like, even when I train clients in person, I will tweak stuff depending on how they're built or what they like or strong suit. You know, there's a lot of different reasons to tweak stuff. So to me, there's an outline, but like you go see that coach and work with that coach and you kind of find out what they really want. And in most cases, if they're a good coach, then they can see you in person and they know there's going to be tweaks too. Like depending on how you're built, you might not be able to get your shins exactly straight up and down.
Exactly.
But when you don't have the person in person, it's hard to figure that out. When you have them in person, you go, no, do this, do this, do this. Oh, there we go. That's it right there.
Yep.
You know,
it's priceless.
And everybody's like that. And Josh is a smart dude. Like I'm gonna have Josh on too. I like Josh a lot. And there was one. I love telling stories about people. I was judging the Boss of Bosses over in California, and Josh was there. Josh was there too. And so I see him in the hotel, and he walks right by me, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like Josh just walked right by me. And then I ran into him later at the meet and he's like, holy shit, I think I walked right by you earlier because it was after I lost so much weight. Right. And he's like, oh my God, you look so different.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. No, when we were at Swiss, that was actually my first time meeting him in person. And we were at the front desk checking in together and he didn't even see me there either. You know, I had to walk up to him and he was like, oh shit, what's up, man?
Yeah.
You know?
I think he's a little like me too. I get when I'm out, like sometimes I'm just so focused on getting to where I'm going.
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, the cool thing about Josh is, man, he's helped me grow so much as a lifter, but also a coach. He will give you a gut check, right?
Mm-hmm.
He'll put something on the program and he knows that you're capable of hitting it if you bring 100% effort to that training session. And man, there's been days, you know, I've always been very confident in my abilities, but there's been days where I look at what's on that program, what's scheduled, and I'm like, all right, Kurt, you got two options. You can step up to the plate and you can go attack this and get it, or you can not be all in and you're going to miss it. Mm-hmm. And he just does such a great job of finding that line with his lifters. And I think what you find is if you're, you know, mentally, if you're a very strong individual, you're going to have a lot of success working under him. Right. And I think that's what you're seeing with all of his lifters right now.
Well, I think too, I think the most important thing to say to that is that he also knows when to back it off.
Yes. Yep.
Like, so he'll push you to that limit, but he knows that you can't keep pushing at that limit, and he'll make sure that you recover. That's one of the things I want to talk about with him when I have him on, because he's like, people know that Josh will push you, and Josh is very intense. But Josh also knows about recovery and knows that we need to push you to here, and we need to strengthen your mental aspects, but we can't overdo it, you know? Yeah. Where a lot of people, one of the biggest things I see in strength sports right now, or the biggest problems I have seen, is people just beating the crap out of themselves all the time. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a time and place to go balls in. Yep. And you need to go balls in. And I love going balls in. And like it's good for your central nervous system. It's good for your mentality. You just can't do it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is, you know, that's funny you said that. That was a topic you and I actually discussed when we were catching up at Swiss. Mm-hmm. We were talking about specificity with training versus, you know, variations, things like that. And you're seeing a lot of lifters right now that seem like they're coming out of nowhere and just completely taking over, you know, in the matter of like a year or two, it seems. Mm-hmm. Now, what people don't see is these people have been training for a very long time, most of the time. But my question always is the style of training that you're doing giving you the best chance of success just right now in the present, or over time? And I think Matt Wennon talks about it a lot, is like, you give yourself the best chance to be the best you can by being healthy over the period of time. And with programming, just to touch on that a little bit, if your programming is full of specificity where it's maybe you're squatting with a straight bar 3 times a week and you're benching comp bench 3 times a week and you're deadlifting twice a week. Now, those are like at the crazy end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. If you're a lifter who's newer and you're learning the motor pattern and the skill that needs to be developed, yeah, you're going to get really good with that real quick. But what's going to happen? What's going to happen after a few years? How are you going to continue to progress? You're going to squat a 4th day?
Yeah.
Are you going to deadlift a 3rd day? How are you going to recover from that? And then at the same time, that's so robotic. I can't imagine for younger lifters that that's enjoyable. Because I know when we got into training, we started training because we just loved it. Mm-hmm. Like something about grabbing that just grimy barbell and smelling those old plates, man. Like I will lift forever because of that, not because I want to be the best powerlifter I can be.
Yes. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think that's, when I first started lifting, I didn't even really want to start lifting. It was actually my first experience with lifting was my dad had one of those really old school bench presses where like the rack is like right next to your head and the plates are like concrete filled, I think.
Yes.
And I'm up there in the bedroom and I'm working out on my own and I take all the plates off of one side and the bar comes up and it splits my chin open right here. And that was, I was 13 years old and I was like, I'm never doing this ever again. And I didn't touch a weight again until I was 18. And my buddy was just like, hey man, I just got laid off from a job. And my buddy was like, hey, let's go to the gym, man. And I went in there and I just needed to mature a little bit,
Yeah.
And I needed to be in a different place. And I grabbed that barbell and I was hooked.
The best part about that story is as soon as you talked about that rack, I was gonna interrupt you and go, yeah, and if you put like 125, it'll fucking tip over. Because the rack, they're like 18 inches apart or something. Yeah, no, you surely did it.
Yeah, I had no idea that's what was gonna, I just wanted to, the only thing, everybody knows that you lay down on a bench and you start pressing the weight. You could not know anything about lifting, but you know that like that's what you do.
Yeah, if you say bench press, everyone in the world has an idea what that is.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of funny you say that though. I mean, I really started lifting when my first experience was lifting was my brother's, I don't know, year and a half older than me. And so he's like, I got to start lifting weights for football. You need to come lift with me. So like I started lifting just to lift with him. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then when he stopped, I kind of stopped because I was like, well, if I'm not going to do it by myself. And then so I started football, and I didn't make first string my freshman year, which pissed me off. So I got to get stronger. Like I just need to be stronger. So I didn't start lifting like for the love of lifting either. It was for something else. And then when I got into it, I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like I love this. Yeah. And it's been part of my life. I'm betting I've never taken more than 6 months off at all. My whole life. And if I did that, it was probably once or twice.
Right.
If that.
And you've been lifting longer than I've been alive. Let me say that.
Yeah.
But
it's funny too because I started collecting shit in my basement. And this is back in the 80s basically. So yeah, like I had some plastic with the concrete in them. And like the bars that you bought with those original sets were hollow bars.
Yes, they were.
Which is like, what a piece of crap. Yeah. And I had like this I remember when I think I was benched. I think I got up to like 225. And I had this old DP like Sears bench. Mm-hmm. And my dad came down and I'm benching and the bench is like just creaking back and forth and and my dad's like, I'm not sure this is safe. Yeah. So, I mean, that went down a path of trying to get better equipment and gyms and stuff. But yeah, I remember all that old stuff. It's so funny.
Well, where I grew up, very small town, and our coaches, I played baseball and soccer. as a senior in high school, I was 5'11", 145 pounds. I was always,
You were skinny as shit.
you're thinking about that,
Like,
right?
yeah,
You're like,
we're not recording video, but my eyes rolled back and I'm like 5'11", 140. Oh my God.
you're like, how is a grown human being that size, right? But I was always strong because I was always, splitting firewood, or, I worked construction and I worked landscaping. So I was always strong, but I was very thin. And our soccer coaches were very old school. They believed in conditioning and running and, in practicing the skill. And same with baseball. Baseball, we use like some medicine balls and resistance bands, but the football team were the only ones that were really taking advantage of lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
So I was never really supposed to get into working out, but that first week, I remember my history teacher was the football coach, Mr. Joseph. There's no chance he's going to listen to this, but I hope he knows he changed my life. So Mr. Joseph always used to make fun of me for being a soccer player. And the first week that
that was way before wokeness.
Yeah, right. The first week that I'm trying to get into working out, he comes in with the football team. And I'm doing like a cable lat pull down, probably not even doing it right. And it was like a scene from a movie where like the music stopped. It was like skirt, and everybody just stood still. And he looks at me, he goes, "Miller, are you lost or something?" And like everybody is just like, oh my God, he just roasted this kid, 145 pounds trying to do a lat pull down. And man, it pissed me off so much. And I went home and I was like, I'm going to show Mr. Joseph, and like, no, I thank him for that because I know he was just busting my balls. It's not like he was trying to destroy me, but I had a choice right then and there. Yeah. I could have either stopped lifting altogether, or I was like, you know what? He's right. I am lost and I'm trying to figure this shit out. And I think I've done a pretty good job over the last 17 years or so of figuring it out.
So going back to what you said about, doing the landscaping and the hard work, do you think that doing that hard work kind of had an effect on your personality, that when he said that, you're like, no, like, screw you. I am going to figure this out. No, I'm not lost. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I know I'm supposed to be here.
You're exactly right. I think when I was growing up, my family was very hard workers. My dad grew up, he was a bricklayer most of his life. And he grew up on a farm before that. They owned and operated a sawmill. So they would go out, cut the trees down. He, from a very early age, had to work full time on the family farm to take care of everything. And he raised me with work ethic. He and my mom both. And when I was growing up, I just always told myself like I didn't have a choice but to do things that needed to be done. Mm-hmm. So it was never an option. If he said, you know what, Curtis, I'm going to work, I want you to split this firewood. When he came home, that firewood was going to be done. Mm-hmm. And that 100% has stuck with me since day one, to where Mr. Joseph came in and said that. I said, shit, I ain't got no choice now.
Yeah.
This is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And, that can be good and bad. But I think for me, it's worked out. It's worked out very well. When I say that I'm going to do something, or when I sign up to do something, I tell myself I have no choice now. Mm-hmm. Some days it gets me in trouble, but for the most part, it's worked.
Yeah, I grew up pretty much blue collar, mechanics, welders, carpenters. And yeah, it was like, that was one of the, I often talk about like what a man is. And I think we all need to have our own terms of what a man is. But one of those things for me was always like, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And I'm never going to back down because of fear or because of scared or because of an emotion. Like, I'm going to look at it logically. If it needs to be done, I'm going to get it done.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I do think that can be a curse. I take that back. Not a curse. Like it goes back to perspective. Like when I was at one of the biggest mistakes I made in my powerlifting was when I totaled 27:33 and the all-time total was like 28:05. And I'm like, I got the all-time total. What I need to do is push harder, because I reverted back to that blue collar, like, okay, just more work, a little more work and I'll get there. And I pushed myself completely over the edge.
Yep.
And I look back and go, God damn it. If I would have just said, hey, take a month, take 6 weeks to just chill out, I bet I would have killed it.
Right. Exactly.
I bet I would have killed it.
Yeah. And that's that fine line, right?
But that's the perspective. What I should have went is like, all right, Chad, hard work gets you where you need to be. Right now, the hard work that you need to do is backing off.
Yeah, right. Because hard work is not, when you do it for your whole life, it doesn't become hard anymore.
Yeah.
Like that hard work just becomes daily habits.
Mm-hmm.
The hard work is the things that you don't typically do. The hard work is like, okay, man, I got to sit here and I got to, do my mobility work. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to do that shit. That's the harder stuff, because anybody can walk through the gym doors and get under a barbell and say, man, I worked my ass off today. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And like, however you define, like one person's hard work is going to be different than another person's hard work.
Yeah.
Like we understand that. But the real hard stuff is the stuff that you don't want to do.
Yeah. Because I tell lifters all the time, like I'll have lifters that they're so proud about how hard they can train in the gym. And I go, come on, let's face it. I go, first of all, I'll out-train you. Yeah. Like, because I can train like a beast. I go, but it's not hard. I love doing it. Like, I love it. Yep. So it's not hard. Like the hardest thing I ever did in powerlifting that made me become the best powerlifter, or one of the best powerlifters in the world, was I backed off, was I stopped beating the crap out of myself 5 or 6 days a week. Like that sucked. That was hard to go, what do you mean? I don't get to go to the gym and kill myself every day? Like bullshit. That's horrible. Going in and doing a recovery session or like stretching, or I get to eat this healthy food, and I get to eat tons of this healthy food. That shit was hard.
Well, you're exactly right. I know for me, the two hardest things have been leaving the gym, because I love being in the gym. Especially it's become challenging for me because it's been my place of work for the last however many years too. So being able to separate myself from work to be able to train has been one of the hardest things, but also forcing myself to eat things as a guy who was 145 pounds, who is now 245 pounds, decently lean, that's been the biggest, one of the most challenging things for me too, is realizing like, you signed up for this, dude. You say you want to lift these weights. These are the things you got to do. Mm-hmm. But,
so that's an interesting thing though. And with this podcast, like I don't do pre-planned questions or nothing. I kind of like to go with the flow. So since you just said that, and because this came up in a conversation a few days ago, what do you say to the kid that's 148 pounds and goes, well, I just can't gain weight?
You know what? Can't is such a ridiculous word. A lot of times what it is, because I was the kid that said that too. And for me, I just realized I wasn't willing to put in the effort at the time to do the things that I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing is everything in life, is very achievable. It's just how far do you want to go to be able to get to that thing? Mm-hmm. And I think it's good to recognize, like, don't say I can't gain weight. Is this one of my main priorities? Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't have to be. Your priority doesn't have to be to gain weight. But if you say you really want to, then you have to do those things that you don't want to do in order to get to it. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing is just like taking your time. I've seen so many people come and go with lifting weights and with competing in powerlifting, that I think what stops a lot of people from getting there is just they don't give themselves enough time to get there, right? Like if you're a 145-pound kid and you want to gain weight, don't say, hey, I want to gain 20 pounds in the year 2023. Say, hey, man, if I can get like 3 to 5 pounds heavier this year, then I'm on the road, and 3 to 5 pounds shouldn't be that big of a deal if you're eating enough.
Right.
So I think what it is like, don't try to bite off more than you can chew. It's funny I said that, but yeah, like when you're starting out, set these small goals.
Yes.
And when you start to check off the small goals and check off those boxes, before you know it, you're going to be where you thought that you couldn't be. And that's kind of how it worked for me.
Well, don't you think with all the people that you train, don't you think that goes in with weight loss or strength or I've literally had girls, they're like, I'm not losing weight. I'm not losing weight. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like I actually have a record of your stuff.
Yeah.
And you're saying you didn't lose weight, but you did lose weight. You just didn't lose the weight you wanted.
Right.
So was your goal realistic? And it's the same thing. Guys like, I'm not getting stronger. I'm like, dude, I have records in my book. Like you're getting strong. I had a client last Friday. I'm not making any progress. And I go, it's in my log. Like you are making progress. Like maybe it's not the progress you want, but you are making progress. So is your goal, and I talk about that in setting goals. Don't set stupid goals. And I think of it in terms of 3 goals. I want a realistic, totally, even if things go wrong, you can achieve this goal. I want an optimal goal, and then I want a daydream goal.
Yes.
But you need to know all 3 of the differences in all 3 of these. And
yes.
if I make this one, cool, on plan. If I make this one, awesome. If I make this one, fuck yes.
I think there has to be like a certain time period when you go and mentally check in on all those goals too. Like when you set that daydream goal, you're going to put that one over there and you're going to save it for a rainy day when you're really thinking. That's the one that you always want to keep in the back of your mind. Like, I think I could legitimately do that, and I want to legitimately do that. And then you, boom, move it to the side. Then those smaller goals, they got to be the day-to-day.
Yes.
They have to be, what am I doing each day? Making my bed, brushing my teeth, eating my meals, getting to bed on time. Those smaller goals, those operations, they get the goals that are going to get you to the big one.
It amazes me when we talk how similar we are.
Yeah.
Because it was like my daydream goal. I think I talked about that not too long ago. I go, dude, when my depression was bad and I was down and just feeling negative, I would daydream about that big, crazy goal. And I never even put a time frame on it. It's like, dude, like when I first started, I remember when I squatted 700 pounds, I'm like, I'm going to do 1,000 pounds drug free. So when everything felt like shit and I was depressed and horrible, I would start dreaming about hitting that 1,000 pounds and what it would feel like. Yep. And that always kind of recharged me and got me refocused and like, all right, here we go. Okay, now I need to get back to this day-to-day goal. Where are we at with this one?
No, exactly. I mean, do you ever find though that it can be a problem if you set your daydream goal too low? Do you think there's a difference between saying it too low or too high? And I'll tell you why I asked that. Because my big goal when I started powerlifting was a total 2,000 pounds raw. And I told myself, I said, man, if I total 2,000 pounds raw, man, I might just quit. What else is there? Because when I started lifting, very few people had hit 2,000 raw, especially at 242.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's like kids are jumping out of the womb totaling 2,000 pounds, And so when I I totaled 2,000 pounds 2 years ago. And when I hit it, I thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. And I woke up the next morning and I realized I'm the same dude with, in the same life. And what am I going to do now? Because I achieved that big time goal, and where do I go now? And so for me, it's like, I wonder if along the way I should have kind of revisited and reestablished some of those big lifetime goals.
Man, you just said a couple of really interesting things. Yes, I think that goal is a goal that needs to adjust. Because I mean, mine was that 1,000-pound mark, or one of my first big ones was 1,000 pounds drug free. And as soon as I did it, I mean, I'll bet it wasn't 5 seconds after re-racking it, I went, I can do more.
Yeah.
And then bam, that all of a sudden got readjusted.
Right.
And it's funny what you said about your 2,000, because I tell people, like, I don't want to deter anybody from trying to do something absolutely amazing. But like when I broke my first like drug-free world records, it was like, okay, this is cool. Well, I want an all time. And then when I eventually broke the all time WPO bench full meet world record, like nothing happens. Like, I don't know that I expected anything to happen, but it's like, I mean, yeah, it didn't change who you were, didn't change how much money you have, didn't change anything. Like, you just did this one thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a letdown for me, because even when I did that, like I tell people that one was about 10 seconds. It was long enough for me to sit up and go, yeah. And then I go, Ethan, was I tight enough? Did I tug hard enough? Like, I'm like, I can do more. What do I need to do more? Like, I was already immediately focused on more.
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't really change anything. I mean, yes, I'm proud of it. I love talking about it. It was a great experience, but it didn't change anything.
Well, that's where you have to have passion for lifting itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I battle with this because I've never been one of the greatest lifters of all time.
Mm-hmm.
There are guys who have broken all-time world records who will be go down as some of the greatest lifters ever. So it's hard for me to speak on that behalf. However, I think if you get so fixated on strictly just wanting to do this to be the greatest ever, there's going to be a time when you're not doing it anymore. And what's going to fill that void, man? You know, I hope that we all live a very long time. And if you stop lifting at 40 years old, and let's say you broke every world record in existence, what's next?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that passion for lifting itself and understand how that just resonates with your entire life, then I think you're kind of missing out. And
well,
Ed always talks about that too.
I think, first of all, now that you got me thinking again, maybe my big dream goal was always more to do the best that I was capable of. And I just didn't realize that was actually the goal. Because even when I did break those records, it was like, no, I know I got more in me. And with my career, it was kind of weird because of my sleep and my depression and suicidal stuff. I kind of pushed myself to a point where it was like, if I keep going, I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm literally going to push myself into a place where I just end it all. Yeah. And so I was forced to back off. But it is interesting what you say about, so you set all these goals and these big goals, and eventually you're going to obtain them, or you're going to realize that I missed my window. It's not going to happen. And then what do you do after that? Which we can go into all kinds of sports where athletes have struggled hard when their career's over because they let that become who they are. And one of the things I love about Eddie is that Eddie has never left the sport.
Yes.
And even though he's not lifting like he used to lift and he's not as strong as he was, he's still helping people, and he's still, judging at meets, and he's still promoting meets, and he's still around meets, and he's still coaching people. And I think that that's an interesting transition. And I think it was me and Steve Goggins. I think we were talking about that. And it's that transition of going, okay, well, my time, I'm not going to do the best numbers anymore. At this point, I'm either going to hang on to the strength that I have, or I'm going to go, hey, it's time to use all this knowledge to get healthy and help other lifters, because we do love the sport, And I interviewed Brandon Allen a couple episodes back, and it's interesting because Brandon Allen was up to like 370 when he was doing big dogs and record break. He was huge. Yeah. And now he's down to I think I saw he was down to 240 the other day. And he did a post where he's like, I slept 10 hours He's like, when I was big, there's no way. He's like, you struggle all night long to get a few hours.
Right.
And it's really cool to me to see those guys that make it to that level and then go, hey, like, okay, like I had my window, I had my time, like being the best at anything in the world is probably not the healthiest thing for you.
Right.
But I'm still telling everybody, like I've said for a long time, I think everyone in this world needs to give a few years of their life to one thing and push it and just see where you can go and then let the cards fall where they may, because that journey, you're going to learn so much about yourself that's going to go way beyond whatever that journey was for.
Yep.
And it's also when I was coming into powerlifting, I was always very cognitive of guys like Anthony Clark and O.D. Wilson. And I thought, Jesus, these guys they were cool people. I never got to meet either of those two, but I've always heard great stories about both of those guys. And I'm like, man, if they would have just said, okay, I accomplished this, now it's time to get healthy, they would have been around so much longer and could have given so much more to people. Like, why couldn't they let go of that being who they were?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, right? I think that's a question that nobody really has an answer to. When I got into powerlifting, my goal was to be the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's everybody's goal when they start powerlifting, or most people anyway. And they're like, I'll do whatever it takes, right? And, I would say that I've been about 90% all in on trying to be the best powerlifter that I can be. And there was a shift once I moved up here to Pittsburgh and I started, getting into my 30s a little bit. And I was like, you know what, man, I still want to be the best that I can be within the range of what I'm willing to give to it. Because I knew that I had many big dreams outside of myself being a competitor. And that was, to one day have a family and be a professional, be a mentor. And there's been a transition where I sure as hell ain't done. And I'm probably more intelligent and more focused and giving more effort towards being the best lifter I can now than I was when I told myself that I wanted to be the best in the world.
Right.
But I now know that if something happens, where I wake up tomorrow and I can no longer compete in powerlifting, I'm going to be just as fulfilled because I know who I am outside of the platform and what my purpose is. And I think that's something that that people struggle with.
Yeah. I think for me, it's because my journey was interesting, which is weird to say. My own journey was interesting to me. That seems kind of arrogant. Because, I did give, like, I literally, there's things I could have done better, but I gave 100%. Like, to me, I was all in. It was 24/7. Like, I promised myself I would never be without a motorcycle. I sold motorcycles so I could get to competitions and stuff. Like, I literally, everything I did for at least 10 to 15 years of my life was powerlifting. And the all-time was the goal was to break the all-time total, was to be the number one. Well, actually, I think I was number 2 in the world at one point, but it was to take the all-time total. Well, that didn't happen. So then you come to that point where you're done and you're like, fuck, I didn't reach my goal. Okay, well, I mean, honestly, so what? Mm-hmm. Like, and then I go back to like my thoughts as I was coming up, is it's like, no, I can't let this become who I am. This is still something I do. And then you get to that point and you have to kind of realize that this is just part of life. Like, okay, I didn't achieve my goal here. Like, not everyone in the world, there's tons of guys that want to be the all-time total holder. Everyone can't do it.
Yep.
Like, so can you go, man, I did a good job, dude. I gave everything I had. Like, yeah, I made some mistakes, but I can say I did the very best I could with what I had at the time. Like, can you be okay with that? And I was okay with that. I was like, all right, well,
Well, I think that's the one thing that has to be present, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you have to be okay with failure and losing,
Yeah.
because you're not always gonna, break every record and stuff like that. But if you can look back and say, man, when I was doing that, I was doing it with everything I
Yeah.
had. I was going every time I got under that bar, I was giving 100%. And that's the big win right there, dude.
And I think it comes back to, like, I tell people, and I talked with Laura Phelps about this. Like, if I bombed out of a meet or didn't get the numbers I wanted, it was like, okay, now it's my choice to be pissed off about this or to deal with this. And did I learn something? Am I better now? Like, even if I didn't put up a better number, am I smarter now after this competition than I was? And I've always could find where I learned something. So I'm like, okay, well then I'm better. And isn't that really what's important? So then, like, even after you get done, you're like, okay, my goal was the all-time total. I didn't make that. Okay, but what did I gain through this journey? And can I turn this journey into something more positive? Which is me doing these podcasts and training people and my YouTube channel. And like, it's like, yes, this is totally turns everything into more positive. And I'm utilizing all that journey and what I learned. And I look at kind of Ed Coan too. And it's like, man, Ed Coan put up these huge all-time numbers, unbelievable lifter. But what's even more important than that is what he's doing now. Like, so that goal that we went for, that we thought was everything, that goal shifts into other stuff. Yeah. And like, which is life, man. Like it's always morphing and changing.
What's crazy is when Ed was in the midst of it, he never realized that this is what his life was going to be. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, he didn't think, hey, I'm going to be the best ever to build credibility so people will trust me and so I can help more people.
Right.
It was just like, this is where I am. I'm 100%. And when it was said and done, he was like, man, I've become the best in the world. I've established this level of credibility and knowledge. Now this is what I'm going to do with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's freaking amazing. Like, and if for somebody, I've had a lot of coaches over the years, and from what I have seen, the best athletes don't always make the best coaches.
That's totally true.
A lot of times it's like that, like middle of the pack towards like upper athlete makes a really good coach. But there's some select people that they're just wired different, man, to where it like means something different to them, to where they're harnessing all of this experience and they can use it in a way that other people can't. Mm-hmm. But that's something that you don't see a lot of times from the best in the top of the sports.
Well, I think that's actually an interesting subject. I think the best coach is the guy who was okay, but didn't have all the natural talent. So he had to work for it and figure out technique, and then became one of the top people. Because he's actually had this experience. And I often think about, because people are always like, well, I don't have the genetics. I don't have this. I don't have that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What really is, like when we say somebody has genetics for sports, what really is that genetic piece? Is it that, like, because I go back, I watch my nieces and nephews, and I'm really into watching kids develop, because I think we can learn a lot about how we first start moving. Like, that's most likely the proper way to move. So you take two kids, and one kid throws hard and one kid throws a baseball soft. Like, the one can barely throw, the other one throws awesome. Is it really a strength thing? Because when I watch them, it's usually the kid that throws hard. You're like, oh my God, that kid's technique is perfect. And the other kid doesn't throw as hard, but you're like, well, what if his technique was as good as the other kid's? So is a genetic advantage actually some muscular thing? Or is it like just the kid just naturally knows how to move?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. I've seen guys come in and deadlift, and you're like, holy fuck, his technique's perfect. He's deadlifting a shit ton, and the other guy comes in and he can't deadlift hardly any, but his technique looks like shit. And you're like, well, what if that guy's technique was good? He would probably pull a shit ton more too.
But I completely agree. I completely agree with that. That's a topic that, like, is on my mind 24/7. We've both seen lifters and athletes of any sport who maybe they move absolutely perfect. And you're like, man, if I could get a hold of them and teach them a couple things, they'll be the best. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you see this person who's like absurdly strong, like a mutant, but they can't even like squat down correctly to pick something up off the floor. And you're like, man, if I could do a couple cues with you, you'd be the best ever.
Yeah.
But then I always battle with, is that actually true? There's a lot of lifters right now who are some of the best in the world, but they don't move maybe as efficiently as they could. But who are we to say that if we took them and made them move better, that they will become better? Shit, maybe we could change their squat and they would end up, blowing their hip out day one.
Yeah.
So I think there's a fine line between like what is efficient movement and what is the right amount of quality strength for each individual. That's crazy.
Right. I do the same thing. Like I'll be like, God, dude, that dude's strong as shit. But what if? Yeah. What if he did this or what if he did that? Like, would it make more? And you got to look. I mean, you look at like guys like Vincenello. I'm like, oh my God, every time I see him deadlift, I'm like, my back fucking hurts. Right. If I could get him to hold his back in a neutral position, what could he have deadlifted? Yeah. And maybe it wouldn't have been as much. Maybe. Or what I tell people a lot of times is I'll have people go, you'll take people at a seminar or something. And it's funny because if I hear a guy trained, he's like, oh, I've been training my posterior chain. I've been training conjugate, West Side style. And then I look at his technique and I go, yeah, you're training your posterior chain, but you're not using it because your technique sucks. I'm like, oh, cool. Dude, I'm going to give a 50-pound PR on this guy today. And I'm going to look like a genius. Right. But he strengthened everything. He just wasn't using it.
Yep.
And then you take a guy who has a strong posterior chain, but he's not like, hold on, I said that wrong. It'd be the opposite. You take somebody that has a weak posterior chain, which was me. Like when I first started, before I found Dave, my background was throwing and football. I squatted Olympic style.
Right.
So I'm squatting 545 for 5 sets of 5 with no belt, like literally as low as I can go. Which is not bad. Like people would come up to me in the gym and they're like, holy shit, dude. Yeah. So I go see Dave and Dave makes me sit back, gets me in proper technique. I can't squat 135 right because my fucking hamstrings, I was all quad, man. Like my hamstrings are so weak, like I couldn't do a glute ham raise, like not even close. Yep. So it took me 6 months to PR in the squat. And then after that, it just kept going through the roof.
Yeah.
But I had to take that 6 months back. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm weaker. It's no good.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, just because you're not lifting more doesn't mean it's no good. Like, so it's kind of like that thing. Even if I saw somebody who's squatting these huge number, but it's like shit. I'm like, I think if we got your posterior chain into this, you do a whole lot better. But it might take a while to build that posterior chain up. It's like we're thinking about something that has so many factors involved in it. It's like you could never know till you actually take the person and are they dedicated enough to listen to you. And, like I have some friends that are top strength athletes and they beat the crap out of themselves. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, if they would just let me train them, just give me 6 months to a year and just do what I tell you and don't do anything else. Only do what I tell you. Like, I'm like, dude, they could be like top guys.
Yeah.
But will they do that?
Well,
and who knows? Do some people need to just beat the crap out of themselves all the time? Like, I don't truly believe that, but maybe, I don't know.
Well, I've had a lot of different training partners over the years. And working in gyms, you see a lot of different members and you see what makes them tick. And I've seen some people who would rather almost kill themselves every training session than legitimately make progress.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know like what in that person's mind is making them tick. Is it like this internal battle with themselves that they just are they punishing themselves like every session? And that is progress to them. But then you also see people who legitimately like, they want to move perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they put 5 pounds on their lifts each year, but they move perfectly, then that's progress to them. So I think that the biggest thing is like what you were saying. Most people are scared to commit to taking a giant step back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know why that is, because I've never really had a problem with that, because my goal has always been the long term. It's like, I'm not worried about what I can do right now, as long as what I'm doing right now gets me to where I'm trying to be down the road. But I think that's just the biggest problem with that.
From my standpoint, why people can't do that and why it was hard for me, you start thinking about the negative instead of the positive.
Yeah.
You're thinking, well, what if I lose my strength? Not what if I gain strength? And I think what happened is, and again, this is where the blue collar upbringing can be bad. How can backing off make me stronger? How can doing less make me stronger? No, doing more makes me stronger. And like, we cannot get past that. And about the guy who beats himself up every day. This is interesting. And I love talking about this, because I was talking with Amber Hansen the other day, and we were kind of talking about how, like, there's so many scary guys in powerlifting. And like, I'm not really scared of anybody. Like, I'll talk to anybody, right. but I've had so many people, like, they'll see me at a competition, then they'll message me a week later and they're like, dude, I was at your competition. It was awesome. I really wanted to talk to you, but like, I'm scared to approach you. I'm like, why are you scared to, like, do you think the person that's under the squat bar is the same? I'm that way all day long. Like, I would be so exhausted.
Yeah.
But it amazes me that people are so scary. And then when you actually meet, I've met so many guys. Mike Rogerio is one of them, the old West Side guy. Like, Mike Rogerio looked like a shaved gorilla. This dude was fucking huge. And the first time I met him, I laughed so hard because he's such a nice guy. And like, there's all these huge masses, strong as hell dudes that are the nicest guys in the world. And the funny thing is when you get to know them and really get to know them, there's so many horror stories, like just terrible childhoods, abuse, getting picked on. And I'm like, how did all these guys, like, if there's somebody that has a right to be kind of pissed, it's some of these guys from their past. But they're all like mellow and calm, and like, and I got to thinking about that. And then when I was coming up, I said one of the hardest things for me to do was to take more time off. Instead of training heavy 5 days a week, I started training heavy 4 days a week, and then 3 days a week. And then I would have two heavy. For a long period, I trained heavy twice a week. And it was funny because back then the forums and stuff were like, Chad fucking trains once a month. How is he so strong? That's bullshit. But I did a lot of smaller sessions. So I was still in the gym every day. But I had a conversation with Dave Tate back then. And I'm like, Dave, I can't back off, man. Like, I need to go to the gym. That's how I don't kill people every day. Like, that is how I deal with my anger and my stress. And so and the point that Dave basically ended with was like, okay, do you want to use the gym as the way you deal with life, or do you want to be one of the best in the world? Mm-hmm. And that that was like a smack in the face. Like, okay. So then I had, that's actually how I started doing recovery sessions. Was that like, okay, well, maybe if I'm in the gym, like, the world will still be okay, because at least I did something dumb and it was boring and I hated it, but at least I was in the gym today.
Yeah.
But what it boiled down to was like, I had to start searching inside myself. Why do I need to go to the gym every day? Why do I need to use beating the crap out of myself to keep myself in line? Like, what's wrong? What's going on inside of me that makes that happen? So in this weird way, being a powerlifter made me delve deeper into myself, made me figure out some of the things that were going on and work on them and become a better person.
Yes.
Which is so, like, when you stop and think about it, it's like, wait, weight training like made you a better human being and made you work through some of the shit you had crammed inside of you. Like, that's kind of crazy. But when I start looking at all these top lifters, I'm like, I don't even know if they know it, but I think they kind of went through that journey on kind of a subconscious level and ended up working out a bunch of shit in their life to where they were a better, calmer, smarter person.
Yep. Nobody gets into weight training and lifting heavy weights because they think that it's going to benefit them as a human being. Yeah. They get like overall, right? People start lifting heavy weights because they want to be stronger. They want to look better. They want to build confidence. They want to deal with their own inner demons. Mm-hmm. But what nobody really realizes, and thank goodness in the last few years, the benefits of lifting have been really coming to the surface. What you learn along the way is that you're developing these skills and this certain mindset that are going to last with you forever. Mm-hmm. And I have never come across one thing that's as beneficial for the human body as weight training and lifting weights. And of course, anything that's overdone can be really bad. Mm-hmm. But I mean, for me as a person, there's nothing that's benefited me in my whole life better than deciding to get into lifting. Legitimately has just changed the projection of my entire life, man. And it's weird because it's like you take so much from powerlifting, but sometimes you feel like you can't give it all back. You know what I mean? It's like when you climb under that bar, like you're taking, like it's given to you, right? Mm-hmm. Like the weights can't speak. And 500 pounds is going to be 500 pounds, but that you gain something from it every rep, every set, every day. Mm-hmm. And I think it's up to us to realize how to return it.
Buddha Barbell Club.
That's it.
I'm gonna change the name.
That's it, man.
But that's it. Like even my intro where I talk about strength and how it kind of leaks into your life. And the reason I named the gym Courage Barbell, it's because it, like, to me, like the lessons you learn in the gym help in life. And then some of the expanded lessons in life then again turn around and help you back in the gym. And it's all intertwined and you can't separate it. Like people try to separate it and they try to act like what happens in life doesn't affect the gym, but it does. And the lessons that you learn trying to get stronger and trying to push yourself are huge lessons that work in life. It's all the same. And I don't know how many people are actually open to thinking about that. I know it happens for a lot of people and they don't even realize it. For me, I was fascinated by it because lifting has always been a mental game to me. It's never really been about the physical. I mean, even like, okay, I want to squat 1,200 pounds. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to do that is no one had done it at the time. And then it was to do something no one's ever done. And it's like, can I get my body to do that weight? And the only way I can get my body to do that weight is mentally.
Yes.
Like it's the mental aspect of controlling your body and controlling my emotions and using them. And so as I started getting deeper into it and I started realizing, hey, wait, this is making me a better person. Like it's fascinating to me to think of all the ways that actually happens. And I mean, because I know bunches of guys that got into lifting because they were picked on or because they were chubby. Or like there's all these like kind of hurtful reasons people get into lifting, and then they get bigger and they get stronger and they're like, well, I really don't feel any different. Like, I mean, I know I've talked to figure models that have been on the covers of magazines and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be that good. I'm really built kind of weird or I'm kind of chubby. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah. And I've talked to like huge, massive guys that still kind of feel like little chubby kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had guys that come up to me and they're like, Chad, you're huge. Like, I wish I was as big as you. And I go, do you look in the mirror? Like, you're massive. Right. And it's so funny that as human beings that we go through that, but that's like, you have to kind of conquer that to be good in the sport.
You do. And the crazy thing is we all have a lot of similarities. Every time, we all start our first day getting under a barbell.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's an expert at it on day one. And what we don't realize is we have so much more in common inside than we even think we do.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool about, I'll do a little plug here for Union Fitness is, it's when Casey helped design that place. And of course, Todd has done a good job of continuing what was started there. Is we would have the front half of the gym would be it's the fitness center. It's treadmills, it's Cybex machines, small weightlifting area with dumbbells, squat racks. And then you go in the back room and it's all competition powerlifting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught a class called Powerful. And Powerful is essentially like an intro to powerlifting and weight training. And a majority of people who took that class had never even touched a barbell before. And, you have people from all different aspects of life that come into Union Fitness to take this Powerful class, that I teach or CJ or any of the other coaches. And you see this morph in them, this change in them from day one to where they are now. And we don't always see it in ourselves because we are living in our own body day to day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy for us to see that change in other people.
Yes.
And that's only something I'm convinced that you can get from a barbell. And that's part of the reason, last plug here, I started my own business, online coaching, and called Ironbound Strength. And I thought about this name for about 5 minutes, and it just clicked like that. In the logo, the N and the B are fused together. Iron bound is fused together because we are bound to the iron the first time we touched it. It's like it's a destiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And through that bond with us and the iron, we're bound together as individuals with the same purpose and for the same cause. And nothing else in the world that's as beautiful as that, man.
Do you think? So I'm into motorcycles and cars, and I'm into a lot of different stuff. But for motorcycles, for example, you'll have some of the guys that are like, oh, I have sport bikes. And some of the guys are like Harleys. And I'm like, dude, we all ride motorcycles. Like, why can't you just leave it at that?
Yeah.
And I've seen in the gym sometime it's like, oh, well, they're bodybuilders. Oh, well, they're just fitness people. Like, well, I'm a power lifter. And I'm like, we're all in the gym. Yeah. Like, why do we have to go any further than, hey, we're all in the gym. We all love to lift weights.
Completely agree. And without getting too deep, I think that comes down to what you have going on personally as a human being. I think if you have that kind of respect that you should for everybody and understanding, humbling yourself to remember that, man, at one point, my ass was scared to walk into a gym. Mm-hmm. And deep down, I'm still that same person. And it's okay if that other person feels that same way right now because they're not going to, in a few months and a few years. And, if you want to do kip ups for 3 minutes straight, I don't care. Guess what? Because I can't freaking do that. And I respect the hell out of you for doing it. Yeah. And you're pushing yourself to the same limit that I'm pushing myself over here doing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's a shame when people don't see.
That's really what it's about.
That's what it's about, man. And that's, it's really awesome.
That's funny because one of the things I always respected about Ed Cohn is that he never, in powerlifting we have you're raw, you're gear, and now we have classic raw, and it's insane to me because I've always saw it like drag racing. Like you have stock, you have pro stock, you have top fuel. It's just different forms of the same thing. Yep. And everybody knows that if you're wearing a bench shirt, you're going to bench more than if you did raw. And if I see a raw guy bench 500 pounds, I'm not going, that's just 500 pounds. I'm like, dude, that's 500 pounds raw. It's fucking awesome. Yeah. Like people know the difference. But Ed never had that animosity towards any, he was like, you're a lifter, man. Like the first time I met Ed, he came up and talked to me, which was just unbelievable. I'm like shooting text to my partners, like Ed Cohn came up and he knew my name. And like, Ed's just like, dude, I love watching you lift, man. Are you lifting this weekend? You know? And he didn't give a shit like, oh, well, you're a gear lifter. I did more raw stuff. Like he understood all of it and knew that everybody's pushing themselves as hard as they can. It's just, we just choose a little different way to do it.
It's about human potential, right? It's about like, it's the beauty of it is seeing people do these things that at one point humans never thought that we could do.
Mm-hmm.
And like continuing to see the bar raised in all aspects, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's powerlifting, whatever. It's such a badass thing to be a part of, man. And we're living in a really cool time. And I don't think everybody really realizes how cool it is to see stuff like this happening.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like, there's sports that I don't give a shit about. Yeah. But if I see somebody do something cool, I'm like, fuck. Like, nobody's ever done that. They broke that record. Like, how hard was that? Like, you know, and I did a post when, because Ryan Krauser just broke the shot put world record, which was like a 30-year-old record.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I'm just like, dude, even if you're not into shot putting, like, that's incredible. That's insane. Like, if anyone knows Ryan Krauser, I'm dying to interview that dude. So, like, try to hook me up with him, man.
Hope he's listening.
Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy that those kind of things. And I think that's, I don't know. I think sometimes, and I'm going down a whole different path now. Like, I think humans need to start looking differently or deeper and like instead of finding what separates people, find what brings people together.
You're exactly
like
right.
I powerlifted. I wanted to break world records. Like, I don't care what sport you're in, but if you wanted to break a world record, dude, I'll sit down and talk to you and I'll probably have an amazing time. And that's like one of the things, even with this podcast, is Courage Barbell Unlimited. It's about the courage to push yourself and to grow and to test yourself. And like one of my favorite interviews so far was Rick Thorne, the old BMX guy, because I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. Like, I like riding BMX, but it's more about what he did and some of the trials and tribulations that he went through. That's what's important to me, even more than the actual sport. Man, I would interview a freaking golfer. Like, I don't care what the sport is. Like, I want to hear the stories and I want to hear what they went through and I want to hear how they overcame stuff. Like, that's the cool shit.
Yeah. Well, there was, one quick story about one of the days that I realized that I could truly do a lot of really cool things is my first 800-pound squat in competition. And going into that meet, I was nailing everything in the gym. Casey was helping me and I knew that I could squat whatever got put on the bar that day. Mm-hmm. I was going home. I was laying in bed. I was visualizing myself hitting 800 pounds like it was nothing, going over my cues, everything. And we get to the meet and I hit my second attempt and Casey goes, all right, man, I'm going to put 804 on the bar and we're going to smoke it. And I go, damn right we are. And I go to set up and the mono lift was a little bit lower than what my actual setting was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so amped up, I didn't even notice. And I went to wedge my hips under the bar to stand up and I start falling backwards. And I take a step back and the spotters had to catch me.
Yeah.
And they put me back in the rack. And I was like, it felt like I had been punched in the mouth. That like Mike Tyson says, I didn't have a plan after that. I didn't plan for almost stumbling back with 804 pounds. And I go, shit, man, I'm not sure what's about to happen right here. But like in my mind, I didn't hear everybody else saying, Kurt, you got this, man. It was weird. I just heard myself, this voice, and it said, boy, you better get the fuck back under that bar.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I got back under that bar and I stood up and I felt like that 804 pounds went through my soul. It felt like it was just deflating me. And I went down in the hole and I stood up and I saw the lights. And right then and there, I started crying because I was like, dude, you just got under that bar when you were scared to death, when it didn't go as planned and you didn't know if you could do it. And you fucking did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized right then that I could apply that to anything I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird because I didn't realize it, but that single lift, It didn't matter that it was 804 pounds. It could have been 304 pounds. That single lift and the outcome altered, how I thought about things.
Okay, so this is awesome because I have an 800-pound squat story too. My first 800-pound squat, there was an issue with the monolift. So like I'm trying to get it out of the monolift and they didn't have it set right. So like it's hooked and it's hooked and it's hooked and finally they get it unhooked and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going for it. And I get loose in the hole and it sinks me down. And I actually tweaked my hip that ended up being a year-long injury that screwed up all my Like I never deadlifted in pain, or never deadlifted not in pain because of that injury throughout my whole career. But as soon as they got me back up and hooked it back in, and they're like, we had the monolift set wrong. And they're like, do you want to do it again? Like, we'll give you another attempt. And I'm like, fuck yes, I do. And so they're like, okay. So I'm like, take my wraps off and rewrap me right. They're like, we'll give you 5 minutes. And I'm like, no, take my wraps off and rewrap them right now. And I got back under it and smashed it. And that was my first 800-pound squat. And it was that same thing where it's like, fuck, dude, I just got squashed. And like, no, fuck that. Like, no, I'm not accepting that. I refuse to accept that reality. Like, I am going to hit this. I'm going to do it right fucking now. That's right. But I think that I posted a quote the other day and, like, I can't remember what it is, but it's like true strength to me, or true guts, is not doing something, is not having no fear in doing something. It's when you do have the fear, when you do realize what could go wrong and you are scared, but you overcome that. Yes. Like that's courage. Yes. And that's what makes it great.
I had that exact conversation with one of my clients yesterday in person. We're doing, I'm having him do this movement that is so far out of his comfort level. And that's part of the reason. And he was like, look, man, like, I just want to be perfect when I do this. And I know that I can't. And that's why I don't like doing it. And I said, I don't think that's why. I think it's because pushing yourself to the extent that you have to push yourself on that movement is scaring you. And I said, it's now out of our control, right? Mm-hmm. But when you approach that thing and you take that fear and you conquer it, that's what it's about, right? Mm-hmm. It's not saying that you're fearless, because I think that's bullshit. I think it's understanding that you do have this type of fear and something does make you scared and you go towards it anyway.
Yes.
And that's where the magic happens.
And that's what I think we talked earlier. I think it was before the podcast, like some of the videos I shot when I was out in the desert. And those were about like, where I'm at in a competition and your mental aspects and stuff. And because I would get so hyped up and stuff, people are like, man, you must not be scared at all. You must. And I go, no, it's like, trust me, when I'm doing these huge weights and Ethan's starting to wrap my knees and I'm transforming myself, at that point, I fully am aware what could happen.
Yeah.
Like I just posted a video of my friend Ed Russ, who did one of the most craziest squats I've ever seen and then ended up crashing with 1,052. And then I ended up crashing with 1,052 like a year and a half later. And I've been down with 1,073. Luckily, I do my mobility and flexibility work, and I walked away from both of them. But I mean, I know like this is 1,000, 11, 1,200 pounds. Like this bad things, very, very bad things could happen for me and the people that are trying to handle it and spot it. So that knowledge is there, but I have to, by the time I hit the platform, I have to get that out of my mind. Mm-hmm. But like, if that wasn't there, if that fear wasn't there, it wouldn't be as exciting to me.
I mean, would you even do it?
I might not even do it. And that's one of the reasons, like people always ask me what my favorite lift is. And I go, I don't know what my favorite lift is, but I'm not really into deadlifting. Yeah. Because if it gets heavy, you just let it go.
There's really not quite the consequence, right?
Like, yeah, it's the fear of being under a big bench or a big squat that I actually really like. Yep. And even the fear of, I did a 1221 squat that got turned down because of depth. But it was in that meet, like I weighed in heavy, my gear was tight. I actually pulled my briefs down below my belly because it was just, shit was too tight. and I did like 1170. I opened to like 1170, and I missed them. I got loose and missed them. And by the time we got to my third attempt, I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. Let's do the world record. Like, I'm tired of screwing around.
Yep.
And it was like, I knew that I could do those weights, but no, let's challenge myself and let's do something nobody's ever done.
Yeah. And
then that gives me that little bit of fear that gets me fired up. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm trying something no one's ever done. And like, while you were talking earlier, I'm like, you know what? I would rather see somebody squat 400 pounds that's scared shitless of 400 pounds than to see somebody squat 1,200 pounds that is totally, absolutely knows he can do it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Like, I want to see somebody overcome that fear, and that would bring tears to my eyes. Like, where the 1,200 pound, I'd be like, well, yeah, he's a 1,300 pound squatter. Like, like, so what?
Well, we resonate with that because we've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the hardest things about powerlifting and getting popularity around is because it's hard to be relatable to it. You know what I mean? Like, as far as if unless you've really done it yourself or you've competed at a very high level, it's hard for you to be somebody who's never done it and look at it and feel those same things and understand those things. It's really just the people who have experienced it that can relate.
That's an interesting thought. So then, would you say, like us talking about this now and actually what it's like, would that be good for, say, spectators to hear? So maybe they can't understand it because they've never done it, but now they're going, well, wait a minute, I thought all those guys were just super confident. But to understand that, no, the reason it is so amazing is that they understand what could go wrong. Like, they've all torn muscles. They've all had injuries. They've all, like, at any moment, anything could go horribly wrong, but we're going to do it anyway.
Right. I think hearing it from people who have been there is great for the sport. I found the biggest thing is being a spectator, maybe for the first time at a competition. I've competed in I've been competing for 10 years. I think I've done like 20 some odd meets, which like isn't that many to some people like yourself, but I've also been to another 30 plus meets, either as a coach, a handler, mm-hmm. spectator. And every time you see people in the audience who maybe have no idea what powerlifting is, but they leave there with such a better understanding because they see that, unlike what they have heard or what they think, the people that are up on the platform are average people. We're all just regular ass people, man. Right? Yeah. We've got our own things that are going on inside of our own mind and our own day-to-day responsibilities. So when people can see that and they see that what these people are kind of still going through, it helps them relate more.
Yes.
There's probably still people that are either my friends or family members who still think I lift weights over my head. You know what I mean?
Oh, you're a power lifter? Are you going to be in the Olympics?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, but when my family goes and they see me compete and they see the passion that I put into it and the things that it brings me. And I think that's when they're like, hey man, I kind of understand this sport now. Yeah. So I think that's what it has to be.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So earlier we were talking about, like motorcyclist and like I'm a power lifter, but that goes with cars too. Like I've met guys before, they're like, I'm Mopar. And it's like, dude, well, so like you can't appreciate any other car. Right. And this is my slick segue into your Mustang.
Yeah.
Which is fucking awesome. So give me some numbers on that Mustang.
Well, so my career before I got into becoming a strength and conditioning coach was I was an auto body technician.
See, that's weird. I never knew that.
Yeah. A lot of people don't. When I was growing up, when I was 10 years old, I'm sitting in my bedroom playing a video game, a racing game, and I was racing with a Mustang, a '67 Mustang, and my dad comes in and he looks at me playing the game. He goes, "You want to go? You want to go pick one of those up?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Let's go. Come on, we're going to get a Mustang."
You're shitting me.
I thought he was kidding, man. And we get in the car and we drive, and next thing we're driving home this 1970 Mustang, right? And at the time, as a 9-year-old, I really I didn't have or a 10-year-old, I didn't have that passion developed for cars yet.
Yeah.
But I will tell you right now, my dad and I are the same person, and there were many times that we have butted heads about a lot of things in life, and that working on that car and throughout, however many years that is, that was the thing that always really helped bring us together and bond us. And I drove that thing for the first time when I was 12 years old by myself.
So that is the same car. I was looking at one this morning and you're like, it still reminds me of being a 12-year-old. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Is that actually the car?
That's the one. I learned how to drive in that car.
That's awesome.
And when I say learn how to drive, like my dad was behind me in his pickup truck.
No shit.
I'm sitting on pillows, struggling to see over the dashboard in that thing. And it's a lot of people. It's just like lifting. A lot of people. It doesn't always mean the same things to them. Some people will buy a car or look at a car and they're like, "Oh, that's a cool car." But for me, man, it just like the nights in the garage, or the days that I had a really bad day and I got in that car and I drove it down a back road and I didn't worry about a damn thing. Like, it's more to me than just a car.
Yeah.
And man, my mom almost made him sell that so many times, and I'm glad she didn't, though. So when I got out of high school, he was like, "All right, man, if you want anything done to this car, you're doing it." It's
So was it York? Did it start as your car or was it his car?
It's always been ours.
Okay.
It's always been ours. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad it didn't start out as mine, because I probably would have ruined it. You know what I mean? As a young kid,
like you didn't have the appreciation for what it was at that time.
Yeah, yeah, that was something that took a long time to develop. But I hope that it never goes anywhere, because I just picture myself working on it with my kids, hopefully one day.
Yeah.
And teaching them the skills that I learned. I think one of the biggest skills is how to deal with frustration.
Oh,
because
yeah.
dude, with old cars, it's not like you're getting in a Tesla and just rolling down the highway.
Mm-hmm.
There's always some shit that goes on with it that needs work. But
that, like you said, that like it's the beauty in the things, and that's I had a '64 Comet Cyclone for years, and I drove it every day.
yeah,
Like I wasn't like, this is not going to sit in my garage. Like I love this car, and it's not. Yeah, it's not. Dude, you have a choke because it was still carbureted. Like you have a choke. You have to change the points. You have to change the distributor. Like you got to keep this thing tuned up, and it'll run great if you do these little things. So can you actually learn to see? I mean, it had a generator. I had to change the brushes. It didn't have an alternator. It had a generator.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you maintain these little things, it'll run forever for you.
Right.
So can you find the beauty in doing this work and keeping these things up?
Yeah, that responsibility.
Yeah.
It's, man, if I got to get from point A to point B, I got to make sure this shit stays together, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't want it to be, and it's the same thing with training. Not every day is going to be great. You don't always go into the gym and love doing it, but can you find a way to remember that, hey, these little things lead to the big thing? Like in a car, me changing these points is going to allow me to drive this every day and have it start every time when I want it to.
Yeah.
And in the gym, it's like, hey, I don't want to do this stretching, but this stretching is going to allow me to be able to retract my shoulders like I need to be and keep my shoulders healthy. So can I continue to see the beauty in this? And so even if I don't want to do it, I don't really mind doing it,
Yeah. Well, for me, it was always like, when we bought the car, it had a small like 302 engine in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it may have made 300 horsepower on a good day. Like it ran pretty good. It was fun, but there was always that quest for a little more
Yeah.
power. More and more and more as you go. Just like lifting,
Mm-hmm.
there's always a quest for bigger numbers and bigger numbers, and you start to figure out how much you're willing to do to get to that point.
Yep.
And with cars, a lot of times it's money
Oh yeah.
or your own knowledge. And with powerlifting, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It mainly knowledge and trial and error. And it's if I want to learn how to get more out of this one thing, I have to research it and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that the car always taught me. And I think when I started lifting, it was, when I first got into lifting, I was staying up till 2, 3 in the morning, reading your articles on Elite FTS and watching Dave's videos on Elite FTS because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I wanted to get to where I wanted to be, that's what I had to do. So they are more similar, cars and lifting, than people realize, or they can be.
I think life and lifting, it's all really similar. So what motor's in it now?
So the motor is actually it's out of an old, like dirt track car. So it was a race engine.
Okay.
It's still a small block Ford, but it's designed off of the same architecture as the NASCAR engine from back in the 80s and 90s. It's called a cleaver. Ford made two 351 engines. It was a 351 Windsor
and the Cleveland.
And one Cleveland. And the Windsor block was much stronger and the oiling system was much more efficient. But the Cleveland cylinder heads flowed so much air and made so much more horsepower. So guys in the 80s would take the Cleveland cylinder heads, put them on the Windsor blocks, and they would be unbeatable. And so that's what it is. I was in high school. I was 17 years old. I think I had like $2,000 like in my bank account, right, from working at the local hardware store. And I wanted one of these engines for a long time, and I had researched them. And my dad's friend called me and told me he had one, and he said, "If you want it, bring me $2,000 and come to my house, and I'll load it up." And I didn't tell my parents, and I went there after school one day with every penny that I had, and I gave it to him. He loaded it up. I took it home. I pull in the driveway, and I go, "Dad, come outside." And I show him this engine, and he's like, "Where the hell did you get that?" And I think I went like a year or two without even telling my mom. And long story short, over the years, I had it built, and that's the engine that's in the car, the same one I bought when I was 16 years old.
That's awesome.
It makes 600 horsepower now.
That's great.
Double of what the car had in it when we bought it.
And you have what transmission do you have?
It's still automatic. It's a C4 3-speed automatic transmission, but it's a full manual valve body, so you have to do all the shifting.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's a beautiful car. Like I love that car. I love when you post more shit on that. I love that.
Yeah. I should post more.
It's kind of funny how you say that it's all like cars and powerlifting are similar, because I have, for being a big crazy kind of guy, I'm very emotional. So I remember, I think I look at things differently than most people, which is one of the things I really love about photography, because photography to me is, I get to take a picture and try to show the world how I see stuff. And so like, I look at your car and I'm like, that's like a work of art to me. Like, cause back in the old days, like cars were different. Like nowadays I look at cars and I'm like, well, wait a minute, is that this or is it this or is it this? Cause they all look the damn same. Exactly. And back in the day, cars had style, and it was like, you found the car that kind of stuck to you. So I look at cars and I'm like, these are just moving works of art to me. This is like going to the Guggenheim and looking at these amazing paintings. Yep. But I see the same thing in motorcycles.
Right.
And I remember, I'll use this story as my example. I was judging at the Boss of Bosses, and Steffi Cohn pulled one of her world record deadlifts. And then she's such a cool person. She thanks all the judges and stuff. So when she came over to thank me, I'm like, that was like beautiful, like almost in tears. Like I was like, that was literally beautiful. And to me, it was like, dude, that's like perfect. Like there's nothing I could say, well, you need to do this. It was like that, like to see that and it be a world record. It was like, oh my God, like I just witnessed this moment that was like unbelievable.
That's art.
Yeah, and that's art. That is art to me. It's moving art.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
So it's all the same. Like it is really all relative if you just take the time to look at everything and see the world in that it's all the same. We're all the same. Like,
right. And I think everybody needs a hobby outside of lifting as well.
I will definitely 100% agree with that. I think like when I was lifting, like I said, even in the beginning of my career, I knew like I can't let this become who I am. Mm-hmm. So one of the things was I got into photography. I always tried to have at least some sort of hobby. And in my thinking at the time, it was like, okay, I need a hobby that doesn't take a lot of energy because I got to save energy for training, right. which I actually think a little differently on now, but we can get to that later. One of the things I tell people is like, when you start lifting in the beginning, you're going to be able to train a lot. You don't have the neuromuscular drive. You don't have the technique. Like you think you're pushing yourself hard. You're not really pushing yourself hard. As you get better and better and better, you're going to start getting way more out of your body. Your movements are going to become more efficient. You're going to recruit deeper muscle fibers. You're literally going to need more recovery the better you get. Where a lot of people are like, oh no, I've been training for years. I can train every day now. No, it doesn't work that way. Especially if you're looking for fitness, yeah, you'll be able to do more. But if you're looking for absolute strength, you're not. And now I have a lot of issues with the real world. Like there's a lot I don't understand. There's a lot I think is unfair. To me, in the gym, things are fair. Things make sense. So what I had to do because like I said, it was hard for me to do less. And especially if you don't have hobbies and you don't have anything outside your life, like what are you going to do? Then it's just sitting around, which is not good for you either. So I had to start thinking about it and like, well, wait a minute. Like I worked my ass off to get this strong. So doesn't it seem fair that now I don't have to train as often? Like I put all that work in. It's fair. Everything that I gave up to get to this point, my hobbies and stuff, now I can keep getting stronger, but train less and less. So doesn't it make sense? Like, isn't that seem fair that now I can have these hobbies and keep this strength?
That part of it does.
And it was hard for me to look at it that way and see that. And where I think if guys did have hobbies, it would be easier to go, well, yeah, I'm training less, but I'm doing this other stuff.
I agree. I also think like, one of the best training partners I've ever had, Joe Lucas, shout out. His main priorities are a teacher, so a professional, and a husband and father. Mm-hmm. But when he is in the gym, he is 100% all in that training session. Nothing else matters. Mm-hmm. But when he is done, he's not even thinking about it. And I envy that skill because I think that would benefit a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I do think that if you want to be the best in the world, it does have to stay on your mind more often. So maybe when you go to bed, you're thinking about your training session the next day, or when you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about what you have to do. But I think more people overall would benefit from being able to separate themselves from the gym when they're not in it. I think because you can give more effort to it when you're there, and you can kind of just recover from it better when you're not there.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, and I think as you're coming up, it's going to be more 24/7, and then it's a transition. What got you to a 400-pound bench isn't going to get you to an 800-pound bench. Like you have to change and progress as you gain strength and as you're getting better in the sport. And I think like what you said about your training partner, I really like that because he's really living in the moment, When he's in the gym, he's 100% in the gym. When he's with his wife and his family, he's probably 100% into that. When he's in his career, he's 100% into that. Yeah. And I really like that. Now with powerlifting, it's like, okay, I got to be aware of my nutrition, and I got to be aware of my flexibility and mobility, what a lot of people don't understand is like how you sit and how you move all day. Having correct movement patterns is going to have a huge effect on your lifting and in the gym. So you need to have some awareness of that. But really, when you're with your family, you're like, okay, I need to have these meals. Like, how much energy does that? It's really not like
exactly
a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And I think as you progress, that becomes more and more important to actually be able to separate it. Like you said, when we start, we're up late researching and we're reading everything. And then like, as you get better, you start understanding that, okay, the knowledge at this point is, I don't need to be researching shit all the time. But when I'm in the gym or when I have opportunities to talk to other guys or when I have some free time, I can look up more stuff. You don't need, you've already learned so much that the knowledge you gain now is little tidbits here and there.
Yeah.
You know, and those tidbits mean a lot because you know a lot.
Right. Well, and you get to the point where you're over the course of decades, the amount of hours that you spend in the gym gets so high.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, I've been here, I've done it. You know, how do you continue to do it? And Joe is 41 years old, and he still comes in and he still gets after it. And, you know, I think by being able to separate himself from training when he's not training has still helped keep it fun and interesting to him.
Yes.
It hasn't burnt him out over the years.
I agree.
Whereas yes, when you start out, I think mentally you should be all in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, it kind of trickles down. And I think that trickling down is to help keep you interested and help the longevity aspect too, so it doesn't burn you the fuck out.
Well, it's almost, you could think of it as 100% in is different in the beginning than 100% in, as like he's still 100% in at this point. It's just 100% in has changed.
Yeah. And when you know what's funny, when we were talking about percentages earlier and I said something about me being 90%, I think you just put into words what I was trying to say then. I've always, from day one, I've been 100%, but my 100% has adjusted along the way to fit the things that I need to do.
Yes.
And that right there is a skill in itself.
I mean, because if you think about, I was just talking about this the other day, and I should have figured out how many hours are in a week. I just suck at math, but it's a lot of hours.
Right.
Well, I mean, how often do most people train? I mean, I try to keep training under an hour and a half for sure. Like if you're using gear and stuff, you may have to go over that, but actually optimally, I think like an hour and 15 minutes is, after that, it's diminishing returns. So say you train 4 or 5 days a week. That's what, six hours maybe out of how many hours are in the week.
Right.
I mean, really, it's pretty minute. And for us to think that it's everything about the gym, it's like, no, that's a minute amount of time compared to all the other stuff that we need to be doing, you know?
Yep. You're exactly right. That time management it plays a really big factor too. And for me, that was one thing I had to learn how to do when I started working at Union Fitness, because I would be in my office taking care of, some administrative work. And then I'd be like, all right, I got an hour and 15 minutes to train. Let me go in this phone booth and change my outfit and become Superman real quick to try to get this done. And, now that I have started my own business and I'll be transitioning into that, I'm looking forward to knowing that when I go through those doors at Union Fitness, it'll be to train.
Right.
But that's where your time management skills really have to come into play.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing though. It would be to, and I too tell my clients, I'm like, dude, you got an hour and a half. Like this is what I want to get in. So where I think some people just go to the gym and they're like, well, when I'm done, I'm done. And it's like, yeah, but if you do that, you kind of end up like you're not utilizing your time very well. And where I think if they did maybe go in going, hey, I have an hour and a half, here's everything I want to get done. Like I got to get moving. Like I got to keep up a decent pace here. and just
Yeah.
kind of like flipping the way you look at it sometimes.
Yeah, man. I mean, I see it a lot, and especially with a lot of like newer people who are getting into powerlifting. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to be really good at lifting that people don't always see.
Yes.
And the one thing that I've seen amongst all great athletes is just their work ethic
Mm-hmm.
and understanding for this amount of time, I'm not dicking around. I'm not sitting down on the floor with my legs crossed. I'm not scrolling through my phone. I'm getting the hell after it. And that's what a lot of people that maybe are just starting out maybe don't understand, is that the difference between starting out here and being here is really kind of simple. There are certain things that, with genetics and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it is the work that you're doing and your focus and effort during the amount of time that you're given. And I can't tell you how often I've seen, I grew up watching guys like you in your era, the gear lifters. Some of my favorite videos on YouTube are like, old school Matt Kroc doing 150-pound single arm rows and stuff like that, getting after it. And it's hard for me now, still being a part of modern powerlifting and seeing it such a slow pace as far as the training intensity goes.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like an old head saying that.
It has changed a little bit. I like, even with dynamic work, like when I have my teams, I'm like, come on, man. Like, if the next guy up shouldn't have to load a plate, these plates should be loaded. You should go through here. And if I have a single guy, I actually started using my stopwatch again. And I'm like, click, you got 45 seconds, man. So you better rest, get your belt back on, and get the fuck under that bar, man.
Yep, exactly.
And trying to get them back in shape. And even, I think another aspect of kind of going along with what you're talking about is even the focus and the intent. Like, I talk a lot about intent, and people are so surprised when I have them come here for seminars, or I go do seminars like at Elite or whatever. Like, guys come up to me afterwards and they're like, Chad, man, we didn't lift like more than 135 today, and I'm fucking exhausted. And I'm like, yeah, because you never lifted with intent. And it takes me, being who I am, yelling at you to squeeze everything and get your shoulder blades tight and root your feet. And they're like, oh my God, like, I had no idea. And I don't blame them for that, because like, for me, it's so natural. Like, I just do it. Like, so I'm sure when they watch videos of me, no one's ever like, God, look how tight he's getting. Like, look how much pressure he's building. Because I'm sure at this point, it looks easy, even though it's not. I mean, even though I still work at it, but
now I think something that came along with that, though, is training in groups or having training partners.
Mm-hmm.
When you're training in a group of 4 guys and you're all using a mono, it's got to be bam, 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 or it's going to be a 4-hour session, right?
Yeah.
So you basically have built in your own rest periods in your own system about how the day runs. Whereas if you're training on your own, there's nothing there to give you that kind of feedback to even let you know, like, shit, how long's it been?
Mm-hmm.
What was I just doing? So that's where training by yourself sometimes can be very beneficial, because you have that inner dialogue with yourself.
Right.
But then training crews are a lost art. And I think more people need to get back into training together and find the benefits and witness them firsthand, because it's one of the greatest things that I ever did that helped me.
Yeah, I think it's funny, because when I started going, okay, I'm actually going to train people and make this like part of my living. I'm fortunate to know so many fucking amazing people, and I started calling up people and asking questions, and I kept hearing that, no, Chad, you need to train people in groups. Like, people want to train in groups. And I'm finding now that they do want to train in groups. Like, I had one of my girls, she was training alone, and then I got another girl, and I'm like, hey, would you guys want? They're like, oh yes, definitely. Like, I want to train with him. And then, because, like we talked earlier, where I want people to learn. So then when I have a group, I have people like, analyzing the other people. I'm like, hey, what do you think? What do you think of that squat? And I'm like, you better have an answer. I don't care if it's wrong, but you better have an answer, because if you're not thinking, I'm going to be pissed.
That's right.
If you're wrong, I can accept that because we can fix that. And so then they start critiquing other people. And if they go, well, he didn't have his lats weren't tight enough. And then their next set, they're going, oh my God, are my lats tight enough? Yeah. And like, so in them learning and then them coaching, they learn even better, and it actually works out better to fix themselves.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's just this whole symbiotic thing of like, this helps this, and then this helps this, and then this helps this. And so you put together this whole thing that's way better for everybody, especially in the long run.
I agree.
And you have somebody like you start fucking off, inevitably one of them people's going to be like, hey, it's your turn, get fucking going, you know? And so like, yeah, you have other people accountable to you. And it's like, once you get them going as a team and functioning as a team, it's really cool. And as a coach, I actually get to it was funny because I heard when I interviewed AJ, or when he was on Elite, he was talking about how Louis wasn't really like this super hands-on guy. Like, he'd kind of sit back, and that's kind of how I can get with my groups, where I kind of sit back and watch it. And I'm like this supervisor, and every now and then, like, I got to get in there and punch a lat or something, you know, to get him tight. But basically I can sit back and kind of watch how it goes and just yell out things here and there, and everything kind of functions really well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one thing that made Louis really great, was he was preparing each of the lifters to coach themselves and coach each other, you know? And I think that's what it's all about, you know? That's one of the best things that I've experienced as well, you know, because I have a hand, like, some of my training partners are also my clients.
Right.
So when I'm under a bar, I want them to be shouting stuff out, you know? It's because regardless of how much I know or how much I've learned about myself, in certain moments, you're not thinking about that.
Right.
So they've got to be accountable and be able to see those things that I can't see or feel to make those adjustments. And when you see all that come full circle, that's a lot of fun, man. That's part of the reason I moved up here to Pittsburgh.
I think that's an interesting thing too. I've been dealing with some back issues, so I'm not squatting or deadlifting very heavy. But before this, like, I would try to like train with people every now and then, because first of all, it allowed me to get my training in. But I think there's something about telling people how intent you want them to be, or with what intensity, and then showing them.
Yeah.
And like, so when you actually train with them every now and then, they're like, holy shit, that's what you want? Oh, okay. Like, now I get it.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually good to be able to train with them every now and then.
Yeah, definitely. It keeps everybody in check. You know, like, I'm not an arrogant lifter, or I'm not an asshole as a training partner, but I think that all my training partners know that my job is to not let you beat me.
Yeah.
I don't come to the gym to get outlifted.
Yeah.
You know? But at the same time, I'm not coming into the gym to outlift you and rub it in your face either. You know, I'm not going to say a word about that. But when we're all training together, if we got 5 guys in a rotation on a monolift, you know, I'll be damned if I'm going to let you outperform me on that day. And if you happen to do it, you did it.
Kudos to you, but wait till the next time.
That's right. That's right. But I think that rubs off on people in a positive way, where they see that and they're like, shit, he's bringing it. I'm going to bring it, because I don't want to let him down. And that's also a reason why I do it, is because I don't want to let them down.
Yeah. That's kind of, I've talked to people about how in some ways powerlifting's strange in a good way. And it was like, you know, when I would be at some of them competitions like the WPO and stuff, everybody wants to win. But it's almost like you don't want to see somebody get hurt, or you don't want to see somebody have a bad day. It's like, we really like each other and we want each other to do good, but we still want to beat them.
Yes.
You know, so it's like, dude, I want you to have an awesome day. I just want to have a better day.
That's right. That's right.
And how many sports do you really know where people have that attitude? Like when
Yeah,
somebody got hurt and bombed out, I'm like, okay, well, I moved up one place, but it still sucks.
yeah,
Like, I don't want to beat them that way.
right, exactly. No, that's what makes it such a unique sport. Some of my best friends and closest friends are people who I've met in powerlifting from all over the world. And that's been a pretty good gift.
That it's funny because I'm trying to go through some of converting my old VHS and mini DVs. That's how old I am, to digital. And so I've been posting some of those, and I end up talking to people that I haven't talked to in 10 years. And it's like no time went by at all.
Yeah.
Like those people were so close because we experienced this craziness together. And it's like, dude, do you remember, like one of my buddies, he emailed me. He's like, dude, you remember like the first time I met you at the meet, like we all went out to dinner, like me and my dad and you all went out to dinner. And he's like, we didn't know you. And it was like, I'm like, dude, yeah, that was awesome. I actually, I totally remember that conversation, like meeting your dad. And like, it was like, how many people make bonds like that over lifting? I mean,
yeah, not too many other things you can do that with. That's for sure.
That's weird. So we're at over 2 hours. I still have more shit I would love to talk to you about. So
maybe we'll have a second. Let's do a second one sometime.
I think we'll do a second one. Like, dude, this was like, I feel like the conversation like never had any lull, and there's still way more shit to talk about.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
So you are no longer with Union Fitness.
Yeah. So yeah.
And you started Inbound. Mm-hmm. So how do people find out more about Inbound?
Yeah. So Ironbound.
No, not Inbound. Yeah. What the hell am I saying?
You're good. Yeah. So find me on Instagram at Curtis Miller _Ironbound. And send me a message, send me videos. I can't tell you, how much I try to suggest people, if they have a question about technique or form or their training, send me a message and I'd be happy to help any way that I can. I also have a website. There's some details about my coaching on that website at www.ironboundstrength.com. And that'll give you a little insight to my service and what I provide as a coach.
So give me a quick service, like what the services you're providing right now.
Yeah. So everything is weekly personalized programming, full access via WhatsApp. So, you can send me messages and I'll respond within 24 hours. That's full video response and critique as well. I always recommend to all my athletes that they send me their videos immediately after their training session. That way we can discuss it while it's still fresh in your mind, instead of waiting till the end of the week to send over everything and we recap it all at once.
Right.
And then, at the end of each week, we kind of, like I said, we kind of readjust everything and get you ready for your next week of training. It doesn't matter if you're a gym lifter or if you want to be a competitive power lifter. If you're somebody who, just lifts in your garage and wants to get stronger, or if you're a power lifter who wants to be the absolute best you can be, I've got you covered.
Yeah. Again, it sounds so similar to the way I do it too. So I'm going to read his Instagram is Curtis Miller _Ironbound. And please go follow him. I mean, I've been in this game a shit long time. And I love when he posts stuff about his car, but you've been doing some with your little Inbound logo. There's some good shit in there. Yeah. I enjoy reading some of that stuff. I've actually saved a couple of them in my photos.
I appreciate it.
That were really cool.
A lot of the content that you'll find me doing is either my own training, obviously, because that has helped get me to where I am, or the things that I have learned over time, whether it be cueing, whether it be a different exercise, just those things that I've kind of learned through trial and error to help get me to where I am as well. So my goal is just to continue to pass on as much knowledge as I can to help anybody.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so I'm going to let Curtis go. Check out Courage Barbell YouTube channel. Like, I always got to stop and think of the stuff that I have going. Check out this podcast. So if you're listening to this, please subscribe to it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like, help me grow this stuff, guys. Like, if you know people that you think would like this, please share it with them. And we also got CourageBarbell.com where you can pick up some apparel, stickers, water bottles. I have more stuff coming out. I just haven't had a chance to get it up on the store yet, but expect more stuff soon. And thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Curtis. This was awesome. I had such a good time today. And I'll catch you guys later next time.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit CourageBarbell.com. Until next time.